Hey, welcome everyone. I'm here with Nick Fuentes. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, pretty good. It's good to speak to you again. Actually, I think this is the first one-on-one live stream we've had.
Is it?
I think so.
I think I had you on my live stream one on one.
Niggas couldn't hear me that whole time, bro. Wow. And I was looking at my mic off that's so embarrassing.
Hey, welcome everyone. I'm here with Nick Fuentes. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, pretty good. It's good to speak to you again. Actually, I think this is the first one-on-one live stream we've had.
Is it?
I think so.
I think I had you on my live stream one on one.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, the Christmas fundraising thing.
Yes, yes.
Damn, where my
Yeah, that was
ashtray
fun. There
at?
was like 10 people on that.
Damn.
Right. Yeah, it was a big lineup. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is our
I
first
don't
one.
feel like getting up to go get
Yeah,
that
this is
joint.
the first
Fuck
time
it.
we can really do a deep dive, explore all
I'm
our
scared. I'm
childhood hopes and
404 right
dreams.
now. I'm scared to play.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the middle of your generational run, right? So I appreciate the charity of you gracing me here. But what's that like for you personally? Has your life changed much the last year?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been very different because I've been doing this, as you know, for 10 years, and I really didn't get a ton of recognition. And if I did, it was negative. And by recognition, I mean by anybody in public, on the internet. And now I became the hero. So now everybody likes me. And the biggest thing is I go around, I get recognized everywhere. And so it's actually, people think that's a good thing. It's actually a bad thing because then you need security everywhere. You can never relax. You're always being watched. So it's actually been a big personal change. I used to be able to just get in my car and go out and travel and not have to think about that. And now I have to literally have security with me everywhere I go 24/7 when I travel, when I go out in public. And so it's a little bit stressful.
Yeah, I remember Ted tweeted about that. He's like, there's like a nightmare position of fame where like if you're super famous, like you just hang around with other famous people and you can afford like 24/7 security. And then obviously if you're not famous, you're fine. But if there's like a middle position where you're like just famous enough to be recognized, then like there's a realistic threat, but you also aren't making a ton of money to pay for constant security and like live separate from the masses.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the middle of that because it's true. If you're an A-lister, typically you're making millions of dollars and you're able to take care of that, get a secure house and an exclusive zip code, all that.
Chat. Shit, nigga. I'm gonna go back into my rant, bro. I'm gonna not listen to I'm gonna listen to Nick Fuentes after I rant, bro, cause y'all didn't hear me. Y'all ain't hearing me a second ago, bro. Y'all don't understand, bro. So let me just keep it a beam, bro. So as far as this ice shit, bro, I feel like a lot of people not even gonna understand my take on this, cause like I am Caribbean, but it's like a lot of people is like not standing on ICE protesters' business in a sense where it's like they're trying to fool everybody saying, yeah, these protesters did nothing wrong. I'm gonna need them people to go back and read the Constitution again and again and again, and realize that it says we are allowed to protest, we are allowed free press, free speech. But where does it say we're allowed to impede on fucking on government operate? Where does it say we're allowed to stop an officer or hired by the government to arrest somebody? Like, when did it say we could do that? So I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm already burnt out because y'all couldn't hear that fucking rant earlier, but it's fucking. It's sad to know like this how bad people cope. Like, it's genuinely sad to know like people aren't like, damn, like hold your protesters accountable, bro. Like, don't go there with no gun and not be posted in the back, waiting for something to happen. Just in case, like, you really feel like that way about Renee Good. It's like, bro, when something like that happen, pop that cop, nigga. Now I'm not advocating for this, but it's like, bro, if that's how y'all moving, like, don't be front line with a pistol, bro. Like you know what I'm saying? It's like I don't feel bad this nigga died. I don't think that what like the minute a gun involved, like you just gotta be mindful, bro. Like these niggas ain't been in enough situations. Like you don't know what it's like when the gun is around and near. You don't know. Like you know what I'm saying? There's fucking 9 ICE officers, 1 Alex Pretty. Anybody else gun. Who you think getting killed out of that situation? It's a pretty good day to start a revolution. Like, no the fuck it's not, bro. They have more power than y'all, bro. Pretty good time to start a national fucking a national whatever they fuck they where that post at, bro. Like it's low key like it's like hysterical because this is like oh shit. I can't even repost it. I can't even show y'all because it's threads. Pretty good reason for a national strike. It's like, bro, no. Pretty good reason to start protesting better. Pretty good reason to start holding your protesters accountable. Pretty good reason to start telling motherfuckers, hey, like, if you're gonna have a gun at these protests, do not be first to go help somebody and jump in the way and all that shit. You there to use your gun if that's what's needed, bro. Shit is crazy. Like niggas don't want to think about okay. Like I heard this briefly. Like somebody has said, "Oh, we should all go tax exempt." I've been tax exempt for 3 years, bro. Like trust. Like I don't even recommend that because it's ass. Like you end up owing so much at the end of the year, and it's like on top of that, like everybody's not doing it. And like if everybody does do it, like it's the IRS, bro. They'll take your shit. So even if we all do it and we all don't pay it back, like I'm sure they still gonna make an example out of niggas that are part of that versus the niggas that pay their taxes normally. But like that's like something of that nature makes sense to me, right? Like in my opinion, something of that nature makes a lot of fucking sense. Like I said, like okay, if it's not tax exempt, maybe we stop buying like jerseys and shit like that for for football and shit. Cause they don't tell like sports like MLS, all that shit. They don't give you the I think this is. I'll say this to me is strange. Like they don't give you the they don't give you the amount of Oh, dumb. I literally wasted a move there. That's so annoying. My fault, Chad. I'm thinking. I wasted some moves here. That was drawn. I wasted a couple moves here. I would have had a free pawn right here if I played my cards right. If I would have fucking just went. Or if I just would have went here, I would have had that right there. Cause this is cooked right here. So I'm thinking maybe go here. Right, now if I go here, I got a feeling he would probably just not even waste time and go there. Alright, I'm tripping. Dude, I need a... looks like he's gonna go there. Let me think. I'll go here. Oh my god. I'll go here, he goes here. I think I'm gonna go here first, actually. Okay. This is a fork. This is indeed a fork. Alright. Fuck. Okay, so I think maybe... There, he takes. Man, that's actually kind of cucked. I think I'm gonna go here. Damn, he's gonna have that free fucking... That's so dick. Damn! I'm gonna keep it a whole stack. I've lost this one badly here. Certainly getting my ass penetrated. God damn. Damn. He's cooking me. This little Asian nigga locked in. Damn, I don't know how I'm gonna play it now. Cause if I go here, then he takes, and I take. Nah, see, I can't even do that. See, cause he got that there. Wow, I'm just in a really, really shitty position right now. I'm not even gonna cap. Don't even know what to do. Literally don't even know what to do. Fuck it, go here. He gonna have to move his queen. I can't get checked right now, which is good. I mean, this is like solid defense right here in the middle. These pawns at e5, d4, d6. Because now I'm thinking I go here. He probably goes there. I go there. Yeah, I think now is a good time. Where do I go first though? I think I'm gonna use this one first. I'm gonna go here first. I'm gonna use the fucking other knight first. Keep looking at my fucking ashtray. He goes there. I'll go here. He takes. Okay. Alright. From here now. Mm, There's not many ways to win for real, which is like. It's corny as fuck. Okay, maybe go. Yeah, I'm gonna just go here. I lost this jump. I'm fighting well. Like, there's like the slight chance I'm able to. There's a slight chance I'm able. Well, I could probably take that fucking that right there. He's close to a checkmate. Ah, he's seen it. He's seen it. I'm gonna still take this though. I go here. He takes. Yeah, that's not good. I want to throw this pawn here. I probably should have just went here. That's like just free. I don't even know why I did that. Damn, Damn. Damn. First time in a minute my first game lost like that.
If you're not making that much money, it's because you're not.
It's all good. It's all good. New game.
Hey, welcome everyone. I'm here with Nick Fuentes. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, pretty good. It's good to speak to you again. Actually, I think this is the first one-on-one live stream we've had.
Is it?
I think so.
I think I had you on my live stream one-on-one.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, the Christmas.
This nigga probably think I'm thinking so hard.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but that was like there was like 10 people on that.
Right. Yeah, it was a big lineup. So yeah, this is our first
Some
one.
real heavy hitters. Yeah, this is the first time we can really do a deep dive. You know, explore our two worldviews. You had I mean, you're in the middle of your generation. Right?
I'll go
So
here.
the
He
charity
takes.
of you
I take.
racing here,
He
but,
takes. Nah.
What's that like for you personally? Has your life changed much?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been very
I'm gonna go
it's been very
here.
different because I've been doing this, as you know, for 10 years, and I really didn't get a ton of recognition. And if I did, it was negative. And by recognition, I mean
Not sure what he's looking to do
in
here.
public on the internet. And now I became the hero, so now everybody likes me. And the biggest thing is I go around, I get recognized everywhere. And so it's actually, people think that's a good thing. It's actually a bad thing because then you need security everywhere. You can never relax. You're always being watched. So it's actually been a big personal change. I used to be able
Should I go
to just
here?
get in my car and go out and travel and not have to think about
he's gotta
that.
move
And now
him
I have
there.
to literally have security with me everywhere I go 24/7. When I travel, when I go out in public. And so it's a little bit stressful.
Yeah, I remember.
I'm gonna just start like this.
There's like a
Cause I gotta get this. I don't want to lose the same way I did that one time.
famous people, and you can afford like 24/7 streaming, and then
Oh,
obviously if you're
that's
not
a
famous,
dirty
like
move
fine. But
right
if there's like a
there.
middle position where you're like just famous enough to be recognized, then like there's a realistic threat, but you also aren't making a ton of money to pay for things like
Wow, that's
security and
crazy.
live separate from the masses.
That's fucked.
Yeah, I'm
I
definitely in
gotta
the
watch
middle
out
of
for that
that
next time.
because it's true. If you're an A-lister, typically you're
Damn.
making millions of dollars, and you're able to take care of that, get a secure house and an exclusive zip code, all that. And typically, if you're not making that much money, it's because you're not that famous. So I'm kind of situated
Oh, he
as
just
a
lost.
political dissident. You're sort of in the middle.
Thanks,
There's all
dog.
these other considerations. So it's a
Thanks,
tough
dog.
transition, I
We'll be
guess,
back
to
at
make.
400 right quick.
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate though. I mean, if someone gets like as famous as you, there's always a
Wow,
chance
he's bad.
you'll dumb down your
That
message
was
and try and
that was
appeal
free.
to the more normie audience. But you're kind
All
of
right,
going the
back in
opposite way, which I
400,
do appreciate.
playing
You're
Italian here.
you're just
Is
like
he going to
doing
go with the
things
Italian game though?
specifically to spite like the
No, he's
chosen
going with
audience, which
London.
is
Okay,
I do appreciate that, especially with like because in the last couple of years, especially like since
that's
October
cute.
7th, the kind of like JQ space, like this said right, is really
That's cute.
like
That's cute.
audience driven. Like it's all like engagement farmers and people that you know if this wasn't popular right now, like they wouldn't be in politics. Like they'd be just some other kind of lifestyle influencer or something. It's a lot of those types. So it's like that was always a problem on the right, like especially conservatives, of people being kind of guided by their audience and just getting lowest common
Hmm.
denominator type slop. But I think it's 10 times worse now. So I do appreciate that there's still, it feels like there's just a
What's
few
he
of us
looking to
left.
do
Like there's
here?
still a handful of people that will just, push back against this.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Oh,
And I was thinking about this the other day. It's sort of funny how much a lot of these, it's not all of them, but a lot of these so-called
wow.
JQ influencers, what do they call themselves again? Like the JQ Brigade or
Noticers?
whatever.
What
The
a
what?
fucking
The
queer,
noticers?
bro.
The
Holy shit.
Noticers. Yeah, all these different names they have for themselves. Some, but not
Wow,
all of
that's
them.
kind of
It's
fucking
so
ass. I hate that
obviously
he took my
they're
knight. I've been
trapped
appreciating
in a
knights recently.
reinforcement loop, like a
Hot take.
positive
A
reinforcement.
lot of people say like, fuck me, man. I'm like really pissed about this. It's all good. It's all good, mate. What's up now, nigga? What's up now, nigga? What's up now, nigga? You lost. You're done. Oh no! No! No, 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 no. I was supposed to go. Oh, fuck me, man. Oh, I can't even fucking castle right now. Oh, oh my god, a free night. I'm about to resign. I'm about to resign, dude. Seriously about to resign. Fuck this, mate. Dude, oh my god, I suck. Wow, bro, that's crazy. Damn. Damn, damn, damn. Damn, he cooked me here. And there he goes. He goes here. Then here, and he wins. Right? Yeah. This guy's. I hate losing like that. It's like, dude literally had to win in 2 moves, bro. This guy's not good. He's thinking hard as hell. I'm about to take that rook right there.
Enforcement loop in a very stripped down way. It's actually like a Pavlovian response where, and I find myself doing this. I thought about it. I wake up and I try to tweet one thing every day. I try to at least get one post up, typically in the morning, and it blows up over the course of the day. And of course, you're optimizing for
Oh, he's about to
engagement. You wanna
disconnect.
get a
Yeah,
big
because he
tweet, you wanna
sees
get
it. It's
millions of
over.
impressions. And I know that when I wake up and I scratch my head and think, okay, what am I going to tweet today? What's going to be
He
the
sees
topic
it.
today?
It's over.
I know that I frequently default to posting something about Israel or something about Jews.
Come on.
Because I know, just instinctively, again, it's that positive reinforcement loop that is what is going to get the most engagement. Those are the tweets that, and I think there's some truth to the fact that might be being driven by a foreign country or, who knows? Maybe it's because there's just massive appeal for that message. I'm not really sure why, but those posts tend to do better. Those are the ones that tend to crack, at least for me. 60, 70, 80,000 likes, and I totally know that going in. And just instinctually, when I think, all right, what is it going to be for today? I always go, oh, if I tweet something about Israel, that's going to get the engagement. And I think that if I have the agency to recognize that about myself and catch myself and say, wait a second, what am I doing? Why am I doing it?
Just take the
doubt
fucking rook,
that
man.
most of these other people have the wherewithal to do that. And if you look at their content, I think that is really what it's driven by. Everything is going to have the same answer. Every day it's the same message because that is the reinforcement loop. That's what's getting the engagement. And I know I sound like, I know I probably sound like the free press right now, but we have to acknowledge that is the reality that we have been facing since October 7th. Ironically, it's actually the anti-Israel content that is being rewarded the most. And I actually would consider that a good thing, because of course in the past it was the opposite. But certainly in light of this development, I think we have to be a little bit careful that we're not compromising the integrity of the message. It should be truth-driven. It should be topical rather than, as you said, audience-captured, audience-driven. There's a demand for, it's always in one direction. It's always more extreme. How can we take this answer and make it apply to absolutely everything? We have to be a little cautious about that.
Yeah, it is really totally different paradigm. I mean, when we kind of discovered this stuff, I don't think people could even relate to the kind of online environment it was. And that, like, there was a time when you had to find obscure forums and, BitChute videos and this kind of thing. And now it's like, yeah, it's in your For You feed if you're like a normie following politics. Even the payout system, it's weird. I mean, you're not monetized on X, obviously, but like there's a round of payouts every couple of weeks, and I see all these like JQ influencers.
I think covert
I only
attack,
got paid,
take the
like,
knight,
$100
right?
for this period. It's like you see their
Bang.
account posting like JQ slop every day. I mean, that is like a serious incentive, though. Even some of the, I saw an account that's the same size as mine that pulled
Fuck
like,
it, sack the.
$3,000 in a 2-week
Fuck it.
period, and that's just
Fuck it,
tweeting
sack the rook.
slop, like 8-10 times a day.
Fuck it, sack the rook.
Yeah, that option is always there. And it's pretty hard to resist. I mean, any space where there's that kind of demand where you can make money that easily, like you're just going to get a certain type of person attracted to it.
Yeah, and to me, it is also a fad. And that is a problem because
Ooh.
a lot of people would say that this is automatically a good thing if your thing catches on and reaches a certain level of adoption. And I suppose that's true. It is definitely a good thing that it's mainstream, and it's a good thing that there's common acceptance of it and the rest of it. But as it becomes a fad, it does attract a different type of person. And like you say, if the information is obscured, if it's esoteric, if it's on Oon's Review and BitChute, and you can only read Culture of Critique by Kevin McDonald, it attracts one type of person, which is the enthusiast, the hobbyist, a true nerd, someone who truly cares about the subject matter. Once it becomes extremely popular and there's an incentive, which is to say that if you post about this, you're going to get massive engagement, you could get a payout. It does attract a type of person where maybe they're not even very politically engaged. Maybe they don't even care at all about politics, but they're sort of just a passive or casual engagement with the subject matter. And then again, you have the same problem. Is this person in it for the right reasons? When they're posting this type of content, is it because they've done the research and it's true and they care about the issue? Or is this part of, for them, the latest fad? They were into one thing before, they'll be on to the next thing afterward. And what kind of damage then does that do to the credibility of everybody in the space? And I think about a guy like Ian Carroll. I think about somebody like Candace Owens. Candace Owens is working for Daily Wire for years and years. One time she's a black Republican, then she's something else. Now she's into this. And you wonder, it's like, okay, so are you just embracing this because it's super, super popular? And then once it's on the other side of this kind of wave, you're going to be on to the next thing? That, to me, that's sort of the problem right now.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this recently, that it got especially bad since around like the end of summer, September, October. So it was two things. I mean, one was the Charlie Kirk assassination, which is just like, that's when you realize, okay, like if any event happens in any context, like these people are just going to invent a Jewish conspiracy. And then that's when you see like, okay, maybe this is actually kind of counterproductive to our thing. And then the other thing was obviously the Gaza ceasefire. So it's like for 2 years you can kind of look past all the differences. It's like, okay, well, maybe we don't agree on everything, but we're hitting this issue every single day. There's footage of, kids being pulled out of rubble, and we can all just team up on this one thing. But then as soon as that finishes, it's like, yeah, you just have people that, they're just going to continue posting 12 JQ, like, slop posts a day. And then other people, their leftism kind of comes out eventually because they have to talk about other issues. I mean, the Renee Good thing was a perfect example. It's like, the new, like in 2017, the JQer was like a white nationalist. It's like, Jews are like a subversive ethnic group undermining white society to get us to embrace mass immigration. Now in 2026, like the JQ guy is like, the Jews want like races to think they're different and be divided, so we don't like team up to tax the rich. So like circle back to totally leftist narrative.
Yeah, it has turned into an anti-colonial, anti-capitalist thing. And I think that maybe that was even a strategic objective of the Zionists, because it seemed that globally, anti-Israel sentiment had reached its apogee right before the ceasefire. And that culminated in France, the United Kingdom, and Canada going to the General Assembly and recognizing Palestinian statehood. That was at the UN General Assembly in late September. And so you could say that all of this was at a fever pitch on social media, among the international community. There was this famine that had been going on. The United States was trying to force a ceasefire but couldn't make it happen. And so finally, it seemed that Israel sort of acquiesced to all this pressure, implemented the ceasefire in Gaza, and then all of this ground to a halt. And like you said, it had been the case for 2 years that this war was going on. It was topical, relevant. We could put aside our differences on every other issue and say, well, like you said, today we're posting more propaganda, and I use that as a neutral term, not negative, but we're posting more of this content that's critical of this government, critical of the regime. Well, in the absence of that unifying point, in the absence of that as a rallying point, everybody has to talk about other issues. And so suddenly now, Venezuela's on our radar, and ICE is on the radar, and all this other stuff. And you look at a Jackson Hinkle, who for the past 2 years is just an Israel critic. Or you look at a Max Blumenthal, same thing. Past 2 years, we just consider him one among the Israel critics on Tucker, on Judge Napolitano. But when it concerns an issue like Venezuela, then you get all this anti-colonial rhetoric, and it turns into just an empire.
They're just going to continue posting 12 JQ like slop posts a day, and then other people, their leftism kind of comes out eventually because they have to talk about other issues. I mean, the Renee Good thing was a perfect example. It's like, the new like in 2017, the JQer was like a white nationalist. It's like, Jews are like a subversive ethnic group undermining white society to get us to embrace mass immigration. Now in 2026, like the JQ guy is like, the Jews want like races to think they're different and be divided, so we don't like team up to tax the rich. So like circle back to totally leftist narrative.
Yeah, it has turned into an anti-colonial, anti-capitalist thing. And I think that maybe that was even a strategic objective of the Zionists.
That's crazy. He's definitely going to take this run.
It seemed that globally, anti-Israel sentiment had reached its apogee right before the ceasefire. And that culminated in France, the United Kingdom, and Canada going to the General Assembly and recognizing Palestinian statehood. That was at the UN General Assembly in late September. And so you could say that all of this was at a fever pitch on social media, among the international community. There was this famine that had been going on. The United States was trying to force a ceasefire but couldn't make it happen. And so finally it seemed that Israel sort of acquiesced to all this pressure.
What was he doing there? He's an idiot.
Ceasefire in Gaza, and then all of this ground to a halt. And like you said, it had been the case for
he was doing too much there.
It was topical, relevant. We could put aside our differences on every other issue and say, well, like you said, today we're posting more propaganda, and I use that as a neutral term, not negative, but we're posting more of this content that's critical of this government, critical of the regime. Well, in the absence of that unifying point, in the absence of that as a rallying point, everybody has to talk about other issues. And so suddenly now, Venezuela's on our radar, and ICE is on the radar, and all this other stuff. And you look at a Jackson Hinkle, who for the past 2 years is just an Israel critic. Or you look at a Max Blumenthal, same thing. Past 2 years, we just consider him one among the Israel critics on Tucker, on Judge Napolitano. But when it concerns an issue like Venezuela, then you get all this anti-colonial rhetoric, and it turns into, well, the West is this evil empire, and we're terrorizing every country, and this and that. And then it comes to ICE, they call it terror capitalism. And you go, okay, so I'm not a third worldist. I'm not a colonialist. Or an anti-colonialist, I should say. I'm not one of these people. And so I think now you're starting to see some of these divisions get exacerbated. And you also realize that most of these so-called JQ people, they never abandoned their liberal priors. These are disgruntled liberal normies, center-left normies, where left populist economic messaging is very appealing to them. And maybe a general anti-war sentiment is appealing to them, and a general anti-capitalist sentiment is appealing to them. And they never really examined those priors, never examined those foundations, unlike, as you said, the right-wingers, who got into this a long time ago because they said, wait a second, diversity is not our greatest strength, and, wait a second,
oh, shit, he just won.
And so on and so forth. Now you have somebody.
Oh my gosh! If he goes here, he wins.
Once the Israel thing goes away, you
wow.
Hold on, we have nothing in common with these people.
That's actually kind of crazy.
Really red-pilled at all.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is going to return to form, though.
He would have won right there. That's nuts. I gotta lock the fuck in.
But like people forget this, but the conspiracy movement used to be a left-wing thing. Like it's really only around the time of the first Trump election that it became grouped in with the right, and the left started aggressively censoring it. But like, if you go back to the early 2000s, Alex Jones was kind of in leftist subculture. There's this old movie called Wake in Life that's like very like leftist coded, like philosophy undergrad type movie.
Oh no!
Like a guest appearance, and he was like a loved character back then. And even guys like David Icke. Like David Icke ran for election in the UK. Do you know what party he ran for?
No, what?
It was the Green Party. So it was
Wow.
very, and even if you think of the narratives, like even like some of the Patriot stuff, like the Infowars stuff, a lot of it was like, who was the villains? It was like Monsanto, Bush Cheney. It was like the military industrial complex, the big corporations. The theory of
I brought my
history was
rook
like
to
basically the
D8 because
Nazis
I want to
like
put this
created
pawn
UN and
here
NATO
at
and all these
D6 to
international institutions.
D5.
So it was like anti-fascist. Like there was like a libertarian wing of it, which was like the Patriot movement and Alex Jones and stuff. But the majority of it was very leftist coded for a long time. I think it was only really, I think when Trump did that interview with Alex Jones, and Jones started really campaigning for Trump, that's when like the regime kind of treated it as, okay, this is actually a problem. This is becoming political, and then they clamped down
Okay,
even
so I
harder. But
think
then,
go
between that and
here,
COVID, it kind of just all got grouped into this thing with the right. But
and
yeah, I
then
mean,
I'll
the origin of it
go
is like it's always kind of tended in a leftist direction.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that identifying Alex Jones interviewing Trump as kind of that breakout moment, I think that's probably
Because
right.
he gotta
Because you're
go
right. I
here
mean,
unless
in
you
the
want to
early
lose.
2000s, Alex Jones was feuding with Michelle Malkin. I remember this when I linked up with Michelle in 2019. There had been this long-standing feud because Michelle was a big supporter of like interning Muslims, like putting
Mm,
Muslims
mm.
in like camps, I think, or something like that after 9/11
That
and
was just
during the war in
absolutely
Afghanistan and
nasty.
Iraq,
I just
which is
drawled on
when
his
you think
shit.
about it, you don't
I
need to
just
be in
did
favor
tricks on
necessarily
it.
of the Iraq War to recognize that Muslims are a threat to Western civilization. I don't know that I support that necessarily, but there was a lot of talk about this sort of thing, surveilling mosques and identifying Muslims that were maybe loyal to Al Qaeda or whatever. And Alex Jones was a major critic of Michelle, saying, well, that's tyranny, that's fascism, and so on. And then you get Trump, who wants to ban all Muslims from America with the rise of ISIS, and he's on Alex Jones' show, and Alex Jones suddenly becomes like a Republican partisan, and now all of a sudden the
Good move.
conspiracy theory is a major right-wing phenomenon. It's like a truly Republican, conservative, right-wing phenomenon as opposed to fringe libertarian, center-left, or even far-left, and now you even have a lot of these people saying there is no such thing as a right and left. We're all going to unite around this issue against Israel or against the Jews, and we can sort of hand wave away all these ideological differences, which I think in itself is sort of like a left-wing view. I think you can only truly believe that if you've already accepted these liberal priors and identify no other problem with Western civilization other than this group of people. And I don't think that's the case. So I'm in total agreement with you on that.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a big thing as well that you mentioned, is like they're kind of chasing the same rewards on the algorithm. I think that translates into activism as well. Like there is a kind of like activist brain type person that you're probably well familiar with, where like they don't want to do the boring stuff of politics. So they don't want to put real effort into getting a message out. It's just about the stunt. It's like the next stunt, and every stunt has to like outdo the last
That's a
one.
good ass move.
Yeah, they get obviously they get drawn to ideas that are out there and edgy, so they come into the right a lot. And then yeah, like combining that with where the algorithms have gone and how much it's opened up with censorship, it's just like a disaster
Here,
for those people, and they're just gonna they're gonna do their thing, and
see
then
what he's
someone's
not
gonna
accounting
censor
for
them,
is
and it's
this
just gonna
right
work no
here.
matter what.
Yeah, it's I don't know where that's going to go, but I think it's time to start drawing some hard lines on that sort of thing, because it's getting to a point where I think it's very clear that we've reached a high water mark. I've described it with different analogies. It's a bull market, it's a bubble, you know, but I feel like the writing is on the wall because I've been doing this for such a long time that I see these trends and I see them come and go, and I feel like there's a very good chance that in the next 6 to 9 months, you're going to see on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter, people are going to start to say, you know what, we've heard this message before, we got it. And I think a lot of people are going to start to say, I think it's time to move on. People are going to say, you know what, we've heard all these talking points. They just blame this one group for literally everything. And the masses are fickle. I think that's what a lot of this crew doesn't realize. People think, okay, we've discovered the skeleton key that unlocks every chest. This is the answer forever. We're just going to keep doing this until, I don't know, the people have had enough and we throw it off in this climactic moment. And that's not really what happens. It is a grind. It's a slog. And it becomes a drag. If you just say the same thing every day, it becomes a drag. And ultimately, the fickle masses are going to move on, and they're actually going to turn against it. And I think that it's better sooner than later to start to articulate actually a more nuanced and well-founded view of the world. I think that will pay more dividends in the long run than to pander to these people that want, like I said, everything to be one answer. Every question has the same exact answer. I think that to pander to that now, we'll pay the price for it later. To feel good now and be popular and say, oh, yeah, Greenland's about Israel, Venezuela's about Israel, Charlie Kirk is Israel, everything is Israel. It's going to satisfy this group of people now that have a demand for it, but in 12 months, people are going to look back and look at it as hysteria. They're going to look at it like it's an incident of mass psychosis. They're going to say, oh, yeah, remember when everybody was blaming them for literally everything? I think it's going to seriously hurt our credibility if we play too much into that. So I've tried to draw some hard distinctions.
He's so hyped, like, watch this.
This is a right-wing movement. We are nationalists. We are identitarian. And our perspective on it is that they have this extraordinary power. They act
He's
like
so
gangsters.
hyped, like, watch this.
Nation state, which
Still
is
doing
kind of
tricks
like a
on it
headquarters
currently.
of their international operation.
Still doing tricks on it.
And, other
Thank you.
loci of Jewish power. That being said, there is not this omnipotent, omniscient, vast, comprehensive conspiracy where a wildfire, a winter storm, the killing of some person, like all of that fits into some kind of matrix. I think we have to draw a fine line between maybe a realistic conspiracy scenario and like a completely speculative conspiracy scenario where it's almost like ontological. It's like the nature of reality is dependent on the conspiracy.
Yeah, there's also like there is a point where like you become so conspiratorial that you just like circle back around being a normie. Because like at a certain point when you meet someone that's like super conspiratorial, where it's like every single thing that happened in the news is somehow like it's to distract you from something else or it's to set something else up. Like those people are basically apolitical, like because who in that environment is not going to be like controlled opposition or whatever. So I mean they're basically just checked out, posts on social media. And even if you talk to normies, like normies are a lot more conspiratorial than people assume sometimes. Like if you talk to the average guy that doesn't follow politics at all, like typically you'll get texts like, well, I just don't pay attention to it because they're all controlled. Like the left and the right, like that's just the thing the rich do to like stop us from focusing on them. Like even like the Epstein thing, how mainstream that's gone in the last couple of years. But like it's not like every normie knows about Epstein now, but like, is that translating into anything? Like, is there any closer to release of the Epstein files, or are they all going to vote for some super like, counter-Semitic candidate in the next presidency or something? So, at a certain point, it's because it's like Candace Owens on her show saying, "Well, Israel isn't actually run by Jews; they're not the real Jews. The biblical Jews are somewhere else, and these are Khazars." And then like all the world leaders are in a conspiracy and all of the opposition to them are part of it. It's like, at that point, what can you really do, right? You just kind of watch the streams for entertainment. But it can't.
Why do I suck? Oh my gosh.
That's sort of the irony. I talked
That's
about
crazy.
With somebody like a Candace Owens or a Tucker, like this group of
what
people.
What the fuck ever, dude?
They are engaging in all these wacky conspiracies, like the chemtrails and supernatural stuff, time travel,
that just pissed me off.
Hidden technology.
Fuck.
I would call that in the realm of pure speculation. There's no real hard evidence for it.
Fucking Christ, man.
It doesn't fit with Occam's razor. These are sort of extraordinary conspiracies, and they contend with issues where things are being completely suppressed from like the general public. It does involve like a campaign of complete silence. Once you get into things like that, like there's extraterrestrial life on Earth manipulating world affairs. There are otherworldly technologies in possession of the government that are...
Damn, that's so crazy.
That is like in a completely different realm, I think, categorically. and you'll see these are being promoted on mainstream shows. It is aliens, it is time travel, it is some sort of secret interdimensional weapon or technology. And yet, when it comes to the Jewish issue, which it seems that they're blaming them for everything, they tend to avoid that.
You gotta go there. I can't believe I
stalemated
stalemated last game, bro.
week,
God
said,
damn. That's crazy.
Nick Fuentes says it's America versus Israel and Jews versus everybody. She says, that's a distraction. She said the real problem is it's Satan and the demons versus everybody, and there are Satanists in every world religion. And when she says that, she doesn't mean in any kind of oblique way. She means literally that there is a satanic cult started by Jacob Frank 400 years ago, 300 years ago. There is this group. They've infiltrated the world religions over the generations, and it has nothing to do with Judaism, has nothing to do with Israel, has nothing to do with Judaism as religion and Jewish identity as it is
damn, that's
experienced
crazy.
by Jewish people in the world. She says that it has nothing to do with that at all. And I see that from Tucker, too. And I see that from Ian Carroll. He said that Epstein wasn't even Jewish. He was one of these esoteric Satanists or something. And so that's sort of the irony, is you think you're contending with an issue where they're blaming Jews for everything and they're just too hardcore. It's like, no, as a matter of fact, they're actually obfuscating it. And they're taking that and fitting into all these other flawed conspiracies. And it gets back to how it's kind of a fundamentally left-wing phenomenon, because what they'll never say is that there's distinct populations with differences, with discrete identities coming into conflict with one another in a sort of kind of like gritty, realist way, kind of realist, pessimistic view of human nature. They say,
Yep,
no,
get out of here.
like
That was
bad
too easy,
guys.
brother.
Typically, it's
No
the
brilliance?
elites.
Crazy.
They're out to get us, the people, the workers of the world.
How is
that
there
are
no
being
brilliance
deprived of an
that
honest
one?
wage.
That's a little
And
crazy
so that's
there.
where it does get really colored by these liberal ideological priors.
Come on, let's get
So
to 500
it's
today,
truly a
bro.
poison. You have to
Seriously.
fight it.
Yeah, it has always been a bit of a problem for the right, though. The whole human capital.
Let's get to
question.
500.
I mean, look, any metrics you look at,
I
like,
think I want to
typically
go
the
here
leftists
then
are,
here, maybe.
better educated, more highly
Nah.
qualified. Go into academia, you're gonna get majority leftists in most
Fuck.
of the departments. I remember.
What, this
Banana
nigga think
did
I'm
an article
stupid?
2 years ago where he was showing where people get their news from.
Stupid.
And, like, on the
Come
right,
on,
it was
nigga.
all TV watchers. It was all Fox News, and Joe
Stop.
Rogan was like one of the
I
biggest
ain't wanna
sources,
young nigga.
actually. And then leftists, it was all print publications or New York Times, whatever.
Then I go here,
Which,
then
like,
here,
okay, even
then.
if
Checkmate,
that's the
nigga.
majority midwits, they're
What's
still
that,
at
like
least
2 moves?
by reading,
3 moves?
they're getting a narrative. They're getting a coherent narrative.
Let's see what
that
you wanna do,
tracks
nigga.
across different areas. They have
Damn, I could go here,
what
but
the
he
leftist
might
take
move his
is
rook,
on
so.
climate change. They have what the leftist take is on immigration, lawfare, whatever.
I'ma just go
Whereas,
through with the
entertainment, it's
pleasant. I
like,
don't even think he
you're
see it
always one
coming,
click
bro. I don't
away
know.
from
Why did he
listening
do
to
that?
Democrats in our podcast.
Why did he
So
go to
basically what you
fucking
get is
A7
right-wing
and
influences
A6?
just kind of
Or
feed
A
back what
fucking
they're
6 to
already
A5. I'm
hearing,
retarded.
it's just
Damn!
and
Foiled
then
it!
that's,
Foiled my plans.
what is the right and
Foiled my
it's
damn
basically
plans.
just if you're against the hegemony of what's the power of leftist hegemony, which is everything from Christian nationalists to like Ebolian fascists, right? So
how can I
so it
cover?
just become this kind of blank oppositional thing.
How can I cover that
But
square?
like, what else do you think is at play there? Like, do you think there's a deeper problem of why the right is
I'm
not
go.
attracting better people?
I'm gonna try this right here. I'm gonna go here, and then I'm gonna
It's hard to
castle.
say. I mean, I think the biggest problem, which we just have to
Damn.
acknowledge, is
Should've
that the
seen
left
that
is
coming.
hegemonic, and so they control all the resources and all the institutions. And I think that over time, that is really what accounts for all of the attrition. When you look at, for example, the alt-right movement in, let's say, 2016 and
I guess I'll
2017,
go
almost
back.
none of those people that were around then are around now. And almost none of them who are around
Gotta
then
be
are even
careful
still
here. Gotta throw this
ideologically
bishop here. Can't
alt-right.
forget that.
Many of them have become left-wing, and many of them have become liberal. They sort of just given up the dream, and you say, well, why is that? Is there something fundamentally wrong with the right wing? Perhaps. Was there something fundamentally wrong with the medium, perverse incentives? What could you attribute it to? And I would say very plainly, the system imposed a very high cost on believing those things
I
and
think
saying
go
those
here
things
then
and
Castle.
organizing around those things. And I think that
Because now I'm kind of
ultimately
rushing to
people are just
Castle.
defeated. They just get tired. They get tired of fighting the battle. You're debanked. You're censored.
I
You're
think Knight
ostracized
to
from society.
C3 then
And people
Castle.
have
What y'all
goals in
think?
their
Castle
lives.
King
People want
side
to make
too.
a living. They want to get married. I look at even a guy like Patrick Casey. Maybe this is the
We'll
best
see what he
example,
does,
and I'm
though.
not saying this just to shade him, but we go to January 6th. He runs an organization, a membership group, American Identity Movement. He's at the Capitol. He's on the steps. He's way closer to the building than me. He's actually on the building.
Just go,
Now, when he goes home,
just go
and he
back.
lives in Arlington, I think he's in that area, the next day, I'm sure he's terrified that they're going to pick him up because he's got a group. He was on the building. Surely he can go down for a conspiracy charge just like the Proud Boys, 3%ers, Oath Keepers. So he freaks out. He abandons far-right politics.
I could do
He
this.
just becomes like a regular pro-Trump guy. He's going to be like a young Republican, a college Republican. And you look at a guy like that, when this happens, I believe he's in his early 30s.
Because then I
He has
cover
no
this
wife.
square
He has
here.
no kids. He's barely making a living running this,
I'm going to just
this little
Castle.
group. I think their headquarters at that time was out in West Virginia. A guy like that looks at his life and says, I'm 30.
What y'all think, chat?
I want to have a family one day. I want
What are they
own a
talking
house.
about? I gotta go back. I ain't been listening.
Religion and Jewish identity as it is experienced by Jewish people in the world. She says that it has nothing to do with that at all. And I see that from Tucker too, and I see that from Ian Carroll. He said that Epstein wasn't even Jewish. He was one of these esoteric Satanists or something. And so that's sort of the irony, is you think you're contending with an issue where they're blaming Jews for everything and they're just too hardcore. It's like, no, as a matter of fact, they're actually obfuscating it. And they're taking that and fitting into all these other flawed conspiracies. And it gets back to how it's kind of a fundamentally left-wing phenomenon, because what they'll never say is that there's distinct populations with differences, with discrete identities coming into conflict with one another in a sort of kind of like gritty, realist way, kind of realist, pessimistic view of human nature. They say, no, there's like the bad guys. Typically, it's the elites. They're out to get us, the people, you know, the workers of the world that are being deprived of an honest wage. And so that's where it does get really colored by these liberal ideological priors. So it's truly a poison. We have to fight it.
Yeah, it has always been a bit of a problem for the right, though.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
Any metrics you look at.
Had to do that. Sorry, chat. Sorry.
Better educated, more
highly
qualified.
I think I want to go.
You're going to get majority leftists in most of the departments. I remember Benania did an article a few years ago where he was showing where people get their news from.
Yeah, I want to go here.
On the right, it was all TV watchers. It was all Fox News, and Joe Rogan was like one of the biggest sources, actually. And then leftists, it was all print publications. Or,
I'm gonna go there.
New York Times, whatever. Which, like, okay, even if that's like majority midwits, they're still at least by reading, they're getting a narrative, they're getting a coherent narrative that tracks across different areas. They have a take on economics, they have what the leftist take is on climate change, they have what the
I think I bring one of my rooks over.
Immigration, lawfare, whatever. Whereas, yeah, with the entertainment, it's like, you're always one click away from going to another channel or to another podcast. So basically what you get is right-wing influencers that just kind of feed back what you already want to hear, it's just this cathartic thing. And then that's, like what is the right in current year, right? It's basically just if you're against the hegemony of what's in power, like leftist hegemony, which is everything from, Christian nationalists to like Ebolian fascists, right? So it does just become this kind of blank oppositional thing. But like, what else do you think is at play there? Like, do you think there's a deeper problem of why the right is not attracting better people?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think the biggest problem, which we just have to acknowledge, is that the left is hegemonic, and so they control all the resources and all the institutions, And I think that over time, that is really what accounts for all of the attrition. When you look at, for example, the alt-right movement
That look like a swastika
in,
right
let's
there.
say,
Holy shit.
2016 and 2017, almost none of those people that were around then are around now. And almost none of them who are around then are even still ideologically alt-right. Many of them have become left-wing, and many of them have become liberal. They sort of just given up the dream, and you say, well, why is that? Is there something fundamentally wrong with the right wing? Perhaps.
I got a free
Was there
queen,
something
bro.
fundamentally wrong
Damn.
with the medium, perverse incentives? You know, what could you attribute it to? And I would say,
Damn,
very
I had a free
plainly,
queen. I should have took the queen.
the system imposed a very high cost on believing those things and saying those things and organizing around those things. And I
There
think
we
that
go.
ultimately people are just defeated. They just get tired. They get tired of fighting the battle. You're debanked, you're censored, you're ostracized from society. And people have goals in their lives. People want to make a living, they want to get married. I look at even a guy like Patrick Casey. Maybe this is the best example, and I'm not saying this just to shade him, but we go to January 6th. He runs an organization, a membership group, American Identity Movement. He's at the Capitol, he's on the steps. He's way closer to the building than me. He's actually on the building. Now, when he goes home, and he lives in Arlington, I think he's in that area, the next day, I'm sure he's terrified that they're going to pick him up because he's got a group, he was on the building. Surely he can go down for a conspiracy charge just like the Proud Boys, 3%ers, Oath Keepers. So he freaks
He
out.
wanna draw.
He
He's a
abandons
weirdo.
far-right politics, and
Why the
he just
fuck would
becomes
you
like
wanna
a
draw?
regular
I'm up,
pro-Trump
pussy.
guy. He's going to be like
Why do you think
a
I would
young
want that?
Republican, a college Republican. And you look at a guy like that, when this happens, I believe he's in his early 30s. He has no wife, he has no kids. He's barely making a living running this little group.
You wanna draw?
I think their
LOL.
headquarters at that time was out in West Virginia. A guy
Let
like
me
that
clean
looks at his life
the
and
tray.
says,
I think I've
30.
earned another L here.
What am I doing? I want to have a family one day. I want to own a house.
It's like,
I
no,
wanna
let me get
make
the
more than
500 first,
35
dude. I
grand a
know I
year,
can.
You know, running this nicky-knack thing. I don't want to have all these white nationalist roommates. And so a guy like this basically just starts to assimilate into the system, starts to moderate, and rationalizes it by saying, well, you know, I'm getting serious. It's time to grow up. It's time to get practical. It's time to work within the system. And so I think that eventually these people are just defeated by the fact that the system holds all the cards.
The Italian
And so I think
game.
people they tell themselves a story. They tell themselves an excuse, and they say, oh, yeah, I don't believe in those things anymore, this and that. I used to know a guy, he was doxxed by Antifa, got fired from his job. They were harassing this guy, chasing him, blackmailing him. And eventually he went to one of these nonprofits, I forget which one, and said, I took MDMA and I stopped being a racist. I took MDMA once, and the chemical effects it had made me no longer a racist. I see the errors of my way.
Poland.
And it's like, he only said that because he
playing
wanted to get his
Polish
job back.
lot,
He only
eh?
said that because he wanted to reintegrate into society. And so I think that's basically what happens. And so we have to be careful as right-wingers not to read too much into that, because I see a lot of
I
people
could
over
go
time,
there.
they just get deflated. And I see
I'll go there,
very
maybe he
intelligent
goes
people and
there.
also dumb people, they just move on. They become normified. And I don't think it's
I
for
don't
any
know.
other reason
Maybe we'll go
other
here.
than left-wing hegemony is so suffocating, it's so vast, it's inescapable. And unless you're really someone with a lot of convictions, someone that is really a diehard, over time you're just gonna get lost to life. You know, your other goals that you might have, you just get utterly defeated, and then you run out of options. I think that's what explains a lot of people abandoning this. They just want better opportunities. And on that point, to kind of put a bow on it, proactively, this is why it is so important for a nationalist movement to be practical about this problem. And I've argued about people with this.
I
If
go
the
here,
movement
but then he goes
cannot
here.
accommodate people's goals in their lives, it will lose those people. For a movement to be
That's
successful,
gonna
you
be
need
annoying.
very talented people. To retain very talented people, the movement has to be a vehicle for them to accomplish their other goals, which might be to get married, which might be to make a good living, which might be to
I got
get
some time
into
to
an
think
institution.
here. I
And this was
could
my argument
cancel,
with
but I don't want to
Arvo,
leave it up to him.
because he came out here to
I
Chicago
want to make
and
the
we had this
decision.
big debate. We
This is
wanted
my
to
game.
start a
All right.
school which would teach our young people.
Uh,
And in my mind, I was thinking we'll do a 2-week crash course and we'll set them up with a job.
I think
That
I'll
was
do
my
this.
idea of a school. I said we'll rent out a hotel, a conference room. We'll do a course for 2 weeks. We'll give them the basics. We'll bring in the experts, teach them how to operate in D.C. I said, and then we'll take a small class of 10 people and we'll hook them up with a job in D.C. We'll hook them up with a job in politics, and then they can start on their career track. And Arvel said, no, I want to bring them out to my compound in Arkansas, and they're going to live in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, up a dirt road, and, you know, it's going to be an all-day thing for 2 years. We're going to be working out and eating and living off the land and learning Play-Doh. And I said, what kind of candidates do you expect to attract with this? An elite 18-year-old that can get into Harvard is not going to take a 2-year sabbatical to go and live with some influencer and do this thing. Like, it's not going to attract the right kind of person. I said, someone like that is going to be looking for something quick and dirty. They're going to meet their favorite e-celeb, get the skills, get the download, and then they're going to get an opportunity. I said, and, you know, we had this big argument about it. I said, look, if you're going to be naive about this, we're not going to attract the people that we need. And you can kind of dig in your heels and say, well, that violates the integrity of the process and we need to do it a certain way. I said, okay, but then you're not going to attract the right kind of people. And so I've always been a huge believer
I'm going to go here.
And people have criticized me for this over the years. I talk about hiding your power level, optics, not doing street activism. If we want a long-term resilient movement, eventually the movement needs to become an institution that can connect people with their life goals. If it can't do that, you're going to keep people for a year when they're in that zealot phase. They have that zeal of the convert. You know, they're gassed up.
How can
okay,
I
I'm
finish
19,
this right here?
and I'm idealistic, and I'm ready to die for the white race. Okay, that guy's in it for 2 years and then says, I want to get laid now. I want to get married. I want to make some fucking money. All my friends are doing something. I'm this bum. You lose people that way. So the movement needs to be extremely practical and aware of that, and not, I think, get caught up. So that's kind of my long answer to that.
Do I go here?
So, do you have a
I
mind?
think
an
he'd
outline?
probably
So
just go.
if there are, like, you know,
If I
genius
go here,
scientists
he goes
out
here.
there, like the next, you know, the next John Maynard Keynes or something. I mean, what do you have in mind to do with him? Is it for now, like, you know, get your degree,
King would be there.
make progress, get influence.
I
And
guess
then,
I
you know,
would
the
probably
networking
go
happens in the
like
background, and
here.
at some point in the future, more political opportunities will
Yes,
arise.
I'm gonna do that.
So obviously, a lot of these people want to be, like, intellectually productive. You know, like even
Cause you can't go
the
here.
kind of the like Bronze Age pervert, that
Can't
whole
go there.
like sphere of people when we were all
Got-
off Twitter that kind of dominated the right. It was very intellectual focused. It was very, like, book focused. It was the kind of thing that, you know, young people that are intellectual typically interested in, which, you know, it
Wasn't
did,
expecting that.
it did
Damn.
help them attract a lot of those types of people. But, like, yeah, they want cultural spaces, right? They want spaces where they can, you know, toy with ideas and argue these things out and refine them. So I guess what happens with those people to stop, you know, that they're naturally gonna, like, drift
Wow, I might have
off
fucked
towards
myself
towards,
over
like,
here.
Richard Hannity, a Substack or something while they're in university.
Can I
Well,
check him
I'm
again
strictly
somehow?
speaking more about entrepreneurial type
Yeah, I
people.
could.
And the reason why is because in order to have an intellectual space, you need patronage. Because what a lot of people will never admit is that entire Bronze Age pervert scene, these people are all propped up with a sinecure. Like, they all have basically a no-show job.
Damn, I think I'm gonna
A guy
lose
like
this,
Bronze
bro.
Age pervert, he tweets
Try
2,000
though.
times a day. He's paid to do it. They all are. All these projects are funded by an angel investment, by a grant, you know, by something like this. And that comes from a very powerful billionaire. What did Peter Thiel do first? He first made a ton of money. And then what did he do? He started the Founders Fund.
Ah.
And he created this cadre of entrepreneurs that have capital. You know, he really created that. That was kind of step number one. And now, over the years, they developed the Forum. They developed these magazines and funding these parties and you know, gathering spaces and so on. And I don't know that we have to operate on the same 20-year timeline, but it's sort of like first things first. The problem even with the intellectuals is, okay, they start a Substack. You have a Substack. You're a true believer. But a lot of these people, they need to make a living. And you sort of see the difficulty of they're trying to work a normie job. They're also writing. And it also leads to a lot of these people being captured, because if you're a guy that's just like writing on Substack, well, what's the next rung on the ladder? You want to get published in some magazine. So now you got to kind of accommodate the magazine and their editorial line. The magazines are funded. You know, Chronicles, these other magazines, they have donors, they're funded. There's like a kind of ideological bent. And that's not shade. I mean, Chronicles is fine and everything like that, but I think that we really need to...
Worst example to pick.
Yeah, because they're pretty solid. That being said, it's Paul
Because they
Gottfried.
published me last month.
But it's Paul Gottfried, and Paul Gottfried is, you know, he's maybe in the mix with some of these people. You know, he's a critic of Hitler and the Nazis, and, you know, he kind of runs in certain circles which might raise an eyebrow. So I think that for us, it needs to be first things first. I think it really starts with a moneyed interest. It starts with getting a little bit of a cadre going. And then you kind of progress into something like that. And honestly, the intellectuals are always going to do their thing. I'm the least worried about them, because intellectuals, unlike a normie, are satisfied by the ideas. I think about a guy like Sam Francis, who perished in ignominy and squalor, or there's other examples too on the right wing.
Jonathan Bowden lived in a caravan.
Exactly. So intellectuals have such an appetite for this stuff that they're willing to exist on the margins. Probably that's the only way they can exist in some cases. So I'm the least worried about them. Ultimately, I'm worried about creating a mass movement. You need a different kind of elite human capital.
But do you ever worry that, you know, like if you get into Marxism, it's this big body of work. Like there's a certain type of system that's very satisfying to intellectuals, you know, because Marxism is like you can get Marxist literary theory, right? You've Marxist economics, you've Marxist theory of history, right? And you can just study materialism. You know, you've like current day politics, all that. And you know, even to mention that example as well, like the Bronze Age pervert thing, like they kind of mix different, you know, different kind of subcultures and topics and so on. Do you worry that that's like one of the things preventing elite human capital coming to the right is you know, the left give you these big body of ideologies that cover everything.
If I go here, then here,
and learn all the aspects of. Whereas the right, it's a much more particular thing. Like even your thing, like America First, it's like, well, you know, that's intuitively appealing to a lot of people, right? And you can apply that to politics. But then there's a certain type of person that's like, okay, well, what's the America First economics? What's the America First model of history, yada, yada.
Yeah, well, and, you know, you wonder, is it because it is ideologically underdeveloped, or is it because there's something intrinsically unappealing about it? And I think it's definitely the former. I think that, you know, when it comes to reactionary, I've thought about this for a long time in my movement. When it comes to our way of thinking, it does suffer from this, like, deficit in terms of an intellectual foundation. Because if you are a liberal or a communist or even for that matter a national socialist, you can fall back on an extensive literature. If you're a libertarian free market guy, you can fall back on Austrian economists and, you know, a sort of rich intellectual tradition. If you're a reactionary, most of the books aren't even in print. You know, if you're talking about, for example, like an economic system, most people don't even know the America First economic system. It's called the American system, or the, you know, national political economy. It's Friedrich List, it's Henry Clay, it's that sort of thing. Try and find those books. Up until recently, they weren't even in print. I think Imperium Press brought back national system of political economy. A lot of the stuff you can't even get on Amazon. And the difference is that if you go to a Turning Point USA or a Leadership Institute or a Young Americans for Liberty convention, they print all the books. They print Economics in One Lesson, and they print Bastiat, and they print Mises. And like you're saying, they have created or manufactured a theory of history, perspective of American history. They have an economic and a foreign policy program. They have all of that basically out of a box, and they have influencers that are pushing talking points that have been written by marketing people and political people. Like, if you want to be one of these people, it's very easy to simply show up, download the talking points, read the required reading list. You have the think tanks that are providing the research and so on. Like, there really is a true intellectual, you could call it a think tank, but I think it's even more expansive than that. It's truly like an intellectual complex. Whereas on the reactionary side, it's much more disorganized. You kind of have a more like multipolar kind of thing where it's like, well, you've got Radix Journal over here, and you've got some of the Catholic integralists over there, and you've got identitarians over here, and you don't really have like a very solid, compelling, rich and broad narrative about the entire equation. And I've thought a lot about this with America First. This is going to be my project with my nonprofit, is kind of creating that all-encompassing, totalizing worldview that you can bring the normie into. So, okay, you get an 18-year-old kid is agreeing with the show. They want to get engaged. Okay, here's the America First bookstore. These are our intellectual traditions. Here's the America First political program. Here is our view. Here's our story of America. Because when it comes to something like a Turning Point or a YAL, they have like a story of America. It's like, okay, so America was founded as this libertarian republic. And, you know, then we fought the Great Society, and we fought the New Deal, and, well, I guess I have that backwards, but you know what I'm saying. Then you have in 64, Barry Goldwater writes Conscience of a Conservative, and then Reagan takes it to the next. Like, they have this story with their particular heroes and their particular inflection points and the laws or causal explanations for different world historical events that kind of bring them up to speed and how they're resuming this sweeping historical battle. Whereas on the right wing, we don't really have that. And if I were to create that, you would tell a story where it's like, okay, we settled the frontier. Like, European civilization overflowed into the world, and we settled the frontier, and we brought Christ to the new world. And, you know, then there was the independence movement, and America becomes a nation. And then, you know, we had a tariff system, and we became rich. You know, I'm spitballing here, but it would be something like this. We would talk about Jewish immigration, the civil rights era, how they deconstructed identity, how they deconstructed the religion. We would tell our own story, and people could understand. They'd have a sense of how we got here in history and where we're going, like how we pick up the baton and carry it forward. So that's kind of like my next project, because I do think it's severely underdeveloped. And then, you know, once we do that, if it's still not appealing, well, then we've answered our question. And if it's intrinsically unappealing, if it's underdeveloped, but I don't think it could be argued that as it stands right now, there's a major deficit of that project. No one's done it yet. You just have these like goofy 12-hour documentaries that aren't even factual. You have journals, contrarian intellectuals that you can barely find. We need that kind of mindset that McDonald'sifies it. We need to franchise it. We need to Americanize it. That's why I think I'm kind of well suited to do this, but I think it needs to be done.
Yeah, libertarianism really is the model for that. I think, like, if you think about libertarianism, like, on its face, you wouldn't expect talk about microeconomics and business cycles. You wouldn't expect this stuff to be very, you know, meme friendly or like normie friendly. But I mean, they did take like a package of economic ideas that came from economists and made it things that, you know, most of the right kind of take for granted. And it was that kind of successful system that you see with Marxism or with the left as well, where, like, you know, they have the low level, the simple, like, don't tread on me, the kind of appealing sort of moral message that can, you know, kind of win everyone over. And then like you can go to the higher levels where you have like a Nobel Prize winning economist, and people can just like, there's a place for the theory cell to go and just like obsess over Austrian economics and business cycle theory for their whole life. So that is a good model. But yeah, again, I mean, that's another advantage of those kinds of systems, is like libertarianism as well. It's just like universal thing. Like you can just apply it to any society at any point in history, any field of knowledge. Whereas again, nationalism is this more particular thing where it's like, well, there's not necessarily like one perfect economic system, right? It's more of like a moral premise of what's going to benefit the nation. So that's, I think that's kind of inherently less appealing to intellectual types.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's where I think we're sort of struggling to find that foundation, because I think that at a certain point, that particularist ideology, it just has its limitations, you know. And I think about this with something like white identity. You know, you try to convince people that they should be selfish, you know, in terms of their identity. And you say, well, you know, we need to build a wall and keep people that look this way out of our country. And I think a lot of people look at that and say, well, isn't that sort of arbitrary? And why should I care about that? What is really the transcendent virtue in something like this, and being, you know, homogeneous or selfish or something? Is it about a preference, survival? And it's kind of hard to make that moral case, because there is something inherently attractive about a universal message, whether that's Christianity or liberalism or Marxism. Because I think those are the strengths of all of those worldviews, is that Christianity is universal, Marxism is universal, liberalism is universal. And I think, especially with white people, but I think people worldwide, there is kind of like an inherent longing for this sense of fairness and, you know, like a global human community and that sort of thing. And you look at the one group that's able to resist this, it's the Jews. And I don't know that that can easily be replicated, because their sense of particularism, it's so strong, it's religious, it's, you could argue, genetic, historically rooted, it's so powerful. I don't know that you could self-consciously replicate that for white people. And you see it for Americans. They try to do this thing where they say, oh, well, you know, remember who you are, patriots. Remember who you are, American. And they post like a Norman Rockwell painting of the Boy Scouts. And a lot of people are like, I want to commit suicide. You know, they're like, modernity makes me want to kill myself. Like, I look at my lot in life.
Ooh, that a brilliant
and it's
move
so
there.
miserable and hopeless. I literally want to take a shotgun and shoot myself in the face.
Oh,
and you see
man.
these people, they're like, hey, yeah, but look at this painting of the Boy Scouts. Remember who you are. Like, here's this painting.
Dude, I gotta do something about brekkie, dude.
And you go,
I haven't eaten
okay,
at all.
like, that doesn't do anything for me. Whereas, if you're a Marxist or a liberal or a Christian, you can show them something that kind of truly speaks to them on a deeper level, and I think that's more compelling. So I agree. There are some limitations we have to deal with the messaging.
This is why you gotta make the move I did and support, you know, nationalism for all people, and present a global vision of, you know, peace and harmony, and you know, a wholesome world of what was the name of that show? Happy Homelands. Yeah, that's it.
Happy Homelands. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, what about all that, huh? So you support nationalism for the Africans and everything?
Well, we can get into that. I wanted to save arguing with you until the end, you know, so I can like snake off after you get mad at me. But we can get into that now if you want.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you want to do.
Okay, well, I would like to talk to you about this Greenland business. Now, I'll say at the outset, right? Actually, I'll tie this into Trump, right? I think, see what you think of this, right? Because you of course famously campaigned for Kamala Harris in 24, right? Now I thought Trump's first year not terrible, right? He shut the border, some of the DEI stuff. I see you giving me a look, but I would say, right, the last 2 weeks was like the worst period of Trump in like his entire history as a politician. You had like the Greenland idiocy, which, like, you know, what was that like? He probably accelerated the demise of NATO and Europe going their own way. Then at least if you guys got something out of it, you could say that, you know, it was some kind of partial success. He just went to the WEF, totally backed down as soon as the stock market reacted, came away with nothing. He comes out like a couple of days ago, says they're only going to deport criminals. This is like a day after that New York Times piece dropped where it says he's deported, what was it, 230,000 people from inside the country. And the campaign promise was like 15 to 20 million. Then, was it yesterday, he comes out and says Renee Good's killing was like a tragedy, tragic mistake. I make mistakes. So he's like disavowing them on the immigration thing. And then I think it was just yesterday as well, they announced that they're going to like do tax-free social security. So he's just doing this gigantic wealth transfer to old people after he gives a speech at the WEF saying basically, I want to keep house prices as high as possible so we can like transfer wealth to boomer asset holders. So I think I have to say, this was like the week where I was like, okay, like the libs were right about Trump. You know, I'm full like orange man bad now. You know, we've got to resist this big giant orange baby.
Yeah, well, you know, it reveals all of his
that war with Iran. I forgot that one. I mean, that's a pretty big one. That's around the corner, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's coming imminently. Are you finished? I was going to jump in there. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that each of those reveals the inherent weaknesses of Trump, which I identified in 2024. And, you know, granted, you were a big Trump supporter. You trusted the plan. You got what you voted for. In many ways, you got what you voted for in more ways than one can count, you could say. But look, being very close to the administration, because I was close to the first Trump administration, I was close to people that were close to Trump during the interregnum, you know, the 4 years of Biden. I'm close to the administration now. And being very close to it and knowing the relevant people, I am acutely aware of Trump's personal flaws and weaknesses. And each of the issues you laid out kind of exposes one of those flaws. So like with Greenland. Now, we could get into the whole Greenland thing, but I think that the way that he handled it, there's no doubt about it that he totally messed this up. Totally. It's just unambiguous. He shit the bed on this. And this is because Trump has no strategy. He only has tactics. And it's the same tactic. It is a maximalist demand, a maximalist position with no end game. There's no idea of how this is going to play out. You know, what's the reaction? What's the counter reaction? His only move is to stir the pot, shake things up, throw the opponent off balance, and bluffing your way through everything, whether it's with China, North Korea, Iran, the protesters, the Democrat. That's always the move. And so with Greenland, he gets up there and says, you know, well, we're just going to have it. We have to have it. We're going to take it. And I'm sure he's thinking the Europeans are going to roll over. Well, the Europeans called his bluff, like everybody's calling his bluff. China called his bluff, and other countries have called his bluff. So they say, well, we're going to do military exercises there. And it gets very messy. They cancel the trade deal. The stock market goes south. So what does Trump do? Well, like you said, he looks at the stock market getting hit by the cancellation of the EU trade deal, looks at the stock market hit by this, you know, maybe there's going to be a military confrontation in Greenland. He backs off because he's very sensitive to the stock market. So you have this one-track, one-dimensional tactic, no strategy, the sensitivity to the stock market, the lack of follow-through. With regard to ICE, so again, they announced that they're backing down on deportations, very sensitive to public opinion. That's something that we know because it happened in 2018. When public opinion turned against family separation, he shut down the policy. He ultimately wants the New York Times to like him. He wants CNN to like him. He wants to have a high approval rating. He's a slave to public perception. And you're going to need to do unpopular things to do mass deportations. That's why it'll never happen. With regard to Renee Good in particular, her father's a Trump supporter. So the father came out and said, oh, I'm not really going to talk about this. I'm not going to vilify ICE because the dad supports Trump. Well, Trump will never go against one of his like slavish followers from the masses. So why did Trump come out and say it's a tragedy? Because he is just like one of these craven people. Oh, the dad's a fan of mine. Well, his daughter died. Oh, that's really sad. ICE made a mistake.
Hey, quarter
So
zip, boys. Quarter zip, boys.
This is a guy that really has
No cat, no cat.
This is not somebody that has a long-term plan.
Quarter zip, boys.
Vision.
Let me stop, bro.
Consequently,
Chill,
this is not
chill,
somebody that
chill.
can kind of put the blinders on and ignore the ups and downs of the
Quarter
stock market, of his
zip, boys,
approval
for
rating,
sure.
of a particular supporter or follower, and that's why you get this very like uneven, choppy waters. It's a guy that's purely reacting to circumstances, reacting to the approval rating, reacting to the
Say what
stock
you
market,
want. The shit
reacting
drip,
to this.
nigga.
And this is why these projects, which would require like a
Shit
true
drip
sea change
on
and
it.
whole of government approach, it's never going to happen.
It's that
If you
United
really want to
Kingdom.
deport 10 million people, you need a plan. You need to stick it through thick and thin for a long time. If you are just constantly reacting to the different ups and downs of political necessity and public opinion, you're never going to get it done. So I think it really lays bare what a kind of hollow politician Trump really is. And he's got some strengths, but he's got some severe flaws. I think they're disqualifying. And I said this in 24. I said exactly that it would play out like this. The Israel lobby being another with regard to Iran. Nobody wanted to listen. They weren't being rational. But I said, look, we saw
if I
this
go
movie in the
here,
first
he can
term.
just go there.
Trump has demonstrated
Okay,
he has
yeah.
learned nothing.
So I
We
think
knew that
I'm
in
gonna
24.
go
That's
ahead
why,
here and
I have all
pin
these
the goddamn,
vindication medals right
goddamn.
about everything, because I mean that was the story we saw for the first 4 years.
Yeah,
Pin the
that's- I didn't know
goddamn,
that about the
goddamn.
good thing. That's even worse if it was something that small that he backtracked on. I mean, I
Weird,
do
huh?
think, though. Do you not think it's? I think it's still better he won though, because I mean, I didn't think he'd follow through on like.
Yo, I can't even cap. I just grabbed myself some
It's like,
drip,
at least-
nigga.
At least now the cope is gone in a way, right? Because if Trump lost and it was just business as usual, it's like, well, if the Republican had got in, this kind of thing would have been fixed, right? Like, I think it kind of has. It hasn't done the thing people often assume with the right of like, well, the right goes back to sleep, and I think part of that is because the Israel thing was so front and center.
Maybe I'll go
of, like, there was
here,
this critique from the
here,
right of like Epstein,
here,
Israel support,
here. I don't know.
and now with the deportations, like people have been wound up enough to
Looks like I
expect
can.
something there. But I don't know what your feeling on that is.
I think that time will tell. It's hard to say because we're in the middle of it, but my big concern is these knock-on effects, these second-order effects. I'm thinking about the next 10 years, and a lot of people are saying, well, there's all these benefits of Trump winning or something. My concern is that Trump is going to bring us all down with him, and he will be blamed for everything. And what's more, the populist left will seize the initiative. So they will actually take these issues from us, like opposition to Israel and war and these economic populist arguments. A Zoran Mamdani type figure might win on like, wholesome Chungus democratic socialism. Because
See, when
all
the
these
queen
people
is
that are
on this
discontented
side, I
with
like to
Trump,
castle away from it.
they're
I was
gonna be
thinking castle
basically
queen
not
side, but now I might
aligned.
castle king
And
side.
they're going to say, well, Trump is a pedo protector, and Trump did all this stuff for the rich,
so we
and
did
the
see
vague
it. Okay.
military-industrial complex,
All
and
good.
Netanyahu, and that could go either way, because you could either say that it's for the Jews, or you could say it's for the right-wing Nazi that hijacked Israel. It could really go either way, and my concern is that Trump, by failing, is going to bring down any nascent nationalist right wing, because people are going to say, oh, well, that's just right-wing Zionism, the Republican Party, nationalism, the far right. We identify all of that with Zionism, all of that with Trump. That was all a mistake and a failure. We tried mass deportations. They were just killing everybody. So then people are going to look for a new Obama. They're going to look at Trump like a new Bush, and they're going to look for a new Obama that's going to heal the nation. Some guy that's going to come out and say, well, let's just stop the madness, heal the country, bring everybody together against Zionism, against ICE, against the rich, and we're going to have an infrastructure bill, and we're going to get out of the Middle East, and blah, blah. I really worry that they're going to take the initiative, take the youth, own populism, and then they're going to have an 8-year dynasty, and it's going to come with all the anti-white policies. It's going to come with the restoration. It's maybe going to be like a non-woke version, but they're basically going to restore liberalism and all the institutions. And so I really think that it's yet to be seen whether Trump will have been good or bad. I think the only good thing that could come out of it is if there is a credible right-wing alternative, someone that is embracing Trump's legacy but rejecting Trump as a figure, that comes out in 28 and says, like, Trump sucked, like, we need something more hardcore, this was a mistake, he, you know, for whatever reason, he didn't finish the job. But that's only going to happen if you really have a radical figure that is viable in 28. And I don't think that's going to happen, because the other effect is that Trump has secured the ascendancy of Vance, and I think Vance is a clown. And to the extent that Trump fails, Vance carries that baggage. And if he loses, well, then now you're really fucked, because now Republicans are going to say, hey, Vance was basically BAP GPT, you know, Vance was basically just downloading all this, like, you know, passage press propaganda, spewing these talking points. He was supposed to be the further right successor to Trump. I think this guy's going to go down hard in 28. And if he loses, then we're really in trouble, you know, in terms of, I don't want him to win, but if he's the guy and then loses, it's like, what shape does that leave us in for 2032, 2036? I think it's a rough place. So I don't know that you can say Trump has awakened Republicans to the corruption in their own party. I think if anything, it's pushing people further to that populist left. These Obama voters, the white working class, I think it's pushing them away from any kind of nationalism. It scares me.
Well, so no one thinks I'm trying to get off the Greenland topic, because that was why I circled around to that. So you did support the worst fiasco of this whole thing, right? The attempt at the Greenland seizure. So you believe America has to own Greenland for national defense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And is there a single accredited international relations scholar, expert on the Arctic, national security analyst? Is there a single person that thinks this, apart from like you and Trump and Scott Greer?
Everybody has said, all the experts have said this. First of all, I love this, like, am I arguing with Stephen Bennell? Stephen Bennell, are you on, is this like a face swap? Where's the expert?
But I know you love like Mearsheimer and all these guys, right? Mearsheimer said it's totally ludicrous. Like that.
Well, Mearsheimer's literally wrong about everything.
Necessary to have like bases there, but I haven't heard anyone except Trump and Trump cheerleaders said that America needs to actually own the territory.
Which experts? Let's see. John Mearsheimer, Scott Ritter, Douglas McGregor, you know, the league of experts have been assembled. You know, they believe Israel's about to collapse. In their mind, Israel is getting their ass kicked by Hamas and Hezbollah. Like, Ukraine is any day now, Ukraine is going to collapse, and Russia's on their way to Odessa, right? And I think they're in fantasy land. We have to be honest with ourselves.
I would never cite Scott Ritter, but no, Mearsheimer's view is like consensus. I don't think there's one person outside Trump. Trump got this idea in like 2019 because he thought it was a cool piece of real estate. And then,
no, I disagree. I think that here's my serious position on Greenland is that you are right that it is a vanity play. 100%. Trump is motivated by vanity because this is bigger than the Louisiana Purchase, and Trump wants to put his name on it. And for Trump, it is all about legacy, everything. Demolishing the East Wing, building this Independence Arch, a new monument in Washington, D.C. It is all legacy building. It's all vanity. I agree with that. However, here is why I think we have to have Greenland. I said this on my show. If we do not have sovereignty over the territory, it is conceivable that when the northern ice sheet melts, as you know, and the Arctic Ocean becomes an area of strategic competition, there is a scenario where China or Russia will be testing the boundaries there, as they have been. And the proof is in the writing from the Chinese Communist Party. They write white papers on this stuff. They write white papers on the Caribbean and Latin America. They write white papers on the Arctic. China considers itself a near Arctic power. What have they set out to do in Central and Latin America? They're doing all of this investment in infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, space programs. Why? Because they plan on breaking the first island chain in the Pacific. They're establishing a fourth and fifth island chain in the Indian Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Africa. They are looking, after they take Taiwan, to break out of this containment. You know, the United States has them buttoned up in these island chains so that they cannot project power with submarines, aircraft carriers, larger ships, cannot control commercial shipping. Once they break out, I got news for you. These deep water ports they're building in the Caribbean and Latin America, these are going to become naval bases. These space stations and radar dishes, these are going to become Chinese military bases. And just as they're doing it in the Caribbean and the Pacific, they're going to do it in the Arctic. Now, let's talk about Ukraine. Why was Russia comfortable invading Ukraine? Because Ukraine was in this gray area. They were acceding to the European Union, acceding to NATO, and technically, Ukraine had a defensive guarantee from the United States. It's called the Budapest Memorandum. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, a lot of Russia's nuclear weapons were in Ukraine. Ukraine became a newly independent state, and they said, well, why would we give Russia, this larger, more powerful country on our border, why would we give them our weapons of mass destruction? Well, the West comes in and says, if you give them the nukes, we will guarantee your territorial integrity. In other words, you don't need your nukes as a deterrent, because we will be your deterrent. We'll protect you. So you can rest assured, if you give up your nukes, Russia won't invade you. You're not defenseless. We have your back. But that is not an Article 5 NATO guarantee. And NATO is effectively American soil. An attack on one is an attack on all. If you attack NATO soil, you're effectively attacking the United States. So Ukraine exists in this gray area where they have a guarantee, but it's not a gold-plated, ironclad guarantee. It is an area of strategic competition. Russia invades, and what you could call that is they're testing this tripwire. A tripwire is established between the periphery of Washington and its power projection and Russia's sphere of influence. And so Russia is pushing as much as they can up against that to see, are we gonna trip the tripwire? Will we activate an American declaration of war in this system of alliances? Or can we push and maybe expand our sphere and get more territory? They tried this in Ukraine, and what happened is then we had to scramble. They pushed. We're not going to war with Russia. We don't really have an ironclad treaty obligation. And so we had to scramble and say, okay, we're going to do this big airlift, send all this supplies, we're going to fight Russia. And now they're going to win some territory. It's a real blow for us. They're going to have Crimea. They're going to have all this territory. In 30 years, China's going to be much more powerful. They have 400 times the shipbuilding capacity of the United States. They're making missiles. They have a 1 million-man army. We have inherent problems. Maybe NATO is going to be weaker. In 30
I'm thinking
years,
pawn to
when the
F5
Arctic
or
heats up,
queen
when
to
Greenland is going to be in play, when the Arctic
C3?
Ocean is in play, it's going to be an open question. Will the United States and NATO be on the same terms? If China encroaches on Greenland, does that trigger an Article 5 attack on one, attack on all? Because if you read it, Article 5, there's some ambiguity. Like if the Falkland Islands are attacked, that's not an attack on all. There's some, people don't know this, but in Article 5, because the European countries have these vast overseas holdings, it doesn't say that every single piece of clay owned by the NATO countries might trigger Article 5. So there's some gray area. You also wonder, Denmark can't defend it. Europe can't defend it. Would the United States go to war with China over technically a semi-autonomous holding of Denmark? What's that relation going to be? Does that trigger it? If they can't defend it itself, will the United States do it? It puts us on the back foot where China could test it. We would be forced to scramble. It does involve another jurisdiction. And so I think to prevent that kind of crisis scenario, it's got to be unambiguously American clay. so that China knows, and we know they know, and they know we know that they know
Wow.
that if they put boots on the ground, if there's espionage, if there's commercial activity, we're going to shut it down, and it would be an act of war. So I really believe that this is a long-term play. In 30 years, you're going to want it to be the United States, and we can't settle for like, oh, we have a base there. I think that will do for now, but ultimately I really believe it should be our clay. And I'm not the only one saying this. There's a lot of people that say it would be preferable for us to have it. I think people criticize Trump's means of acquiring it, and I would agree with that. I think that Trump obviously blundered it. But no, that's my argument why I think we should have sovereignty over it.
Why wasn't it a problem during the Cold War then? Because, I mean, the U.S. had like 50 bases there during the Cold War. It still could if it wanted to, but it just decided to shut most of them, right? Like this. Because, I mean, what does NATO even mean then? If you're like, well, you know, technically they're in NATO, but maybe the rest of NATO like won't have the capacity to defend it. Well, like, why not just tear up NATO at that point? Then? I mean, you could make that argument for any other member state in NATO. But I mean, the U.S., like what Trump is celebrating as his big win now, that they can operate freely with military bases. I mean, that's been the norm since like the early 50s, right?
The difference is that the Arctic Ocean is going to become a much more important area. So we have military bases there for early detection of ICBMs. And so that's why we can say, you know, we actually had like a lot of troops there. I forget the exact number, but it was in the tens of thousands of troops in Greenland. We had dozens of bases, scientific research bases, all kinds of things. But Greenland was purely like an outpost for early detection of ICBMs in outer space because it's in the midpoint between DC and Moscow. The reason it's going to heat up, quite literally, is because the northern ice sheet is going to melt, and you're going to have commercial shipping there. It's going to be three major trade routes: the Northwest Passage in Canada, Northern Sea Route in Siberia, and the Trans-Arctic Sea Route between the continents. So you're going to have a lot more activity over there. You might actually have an invasion. You might actually have you know, real commercial activity happening up there. That's one. And two, the NATO alliance is fracturing. So in the Cold War, the NATO alliance was airtight because NATO was absolutely dependent on the United States. They were weakened after World War II. The only thing stopping Russian tanks was Strategic Air Command from the United States. In other words, we balanced Russia's conventional capabilities with our strategic capabilities, our nukes, our strategic bombers, ICBMs. Going forward, it's going to be completely different. Russia's much weaker. NATO is much stronger. And by that, I mean the European part of NATO. NATO, therefore, can be more strategically autonomous. The future of NATO is in question. And the real threat is coming from China. China does not threaten NATO in the way that Russia does. If the Soviet Union is the second pole in the bipolar world order, it forces NATO into our arms because how does NATO check Russia? Well, they bring in the United States. Well, in the future, China does not threaten NATO in the way that they threaten us. It's a Pacific and an Arctic competition. So NATO and Canada, they are looking at us as the threat, and they're going to hedge by going to China because they don't have to worry about being invaded by China. So I think that those are kind of the new dynamics that you have in 2050 that you don't have in 1950 when we established that agreement. That's why I think we got to have it.
Yeah, but isn't that just something to be negotiated within NATO? I mean, obviously, like, if NATO member states, like if Denmark starts handing over, if it hands over a piece of land to China or something, then obviously, okay, now it becomes a different question. But I mean, right now, there's no indication of this. And if you're going to say, like, well, we're going to take this because, you know, like when Scott Greer was arguing, it's like, well, maybe 30 years down the line, there'll be like this anti-colonial movement, and then Greenland will go independent, and then it'll join the Chinese sphere of influence, and then there'll be bases there. It's like this if-then chain of like 100 pieces. But like, what, you're going to tear up NATO in the, like right now for this potential that's very unlikely in the long term anyway?
Well, I would say that I don't think that's convoluted at all. I think that's that's a legitimate fear because it is true that Greenland is tending towards independence. They do want independence. And what happens when that happens? Do you think Denmark is going to say, no, you're going to be a colonial holding forever? I don't think it's far-fetched at all to say that in the future, there's an independence movement there. They want sovereignty. Denmark will not resist that. Once Greenland becomes an autonomous country, how then are you going to tell them they can't do a mining contract with China, that they can't have a research station with China? China's done it before. There was a crisis. They wanted to invest in an airport. They wanted to invest in mining. It's like I said, China's written white papers about this. They've done it in the Caribbean. They've done it in the Pacific. Those are current areas of competition. The Arctic is a future area of competition, and they've tried to get their hands in there. The United States, responding to the crisis, came in and said, no, we're shutting this down. It was reactive. I'm saying we need to be proactive and make it so that that is never a possibility. Now, you say, well, that's super convoluted. It's not. That's a real threat in 25 or within 25 or 30 years inside of that timeline. And if that's a threat, we do need to be proactive. Now, you say, well, it's not worth the risk of tearing up NATO. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, because NATO is still reliant on the United States. The United States and the European Union are each other's largest trading partners. They need us for LNG. They need us for weapons. They need us for software. They need us for capital markets. They need us for a lot of things. We need Europe for a lot of things. And so, I think that the Europeans know that this is Trump. And there was a lot of bluster about Trump blowing up NATO in the first term. There's bluster about that in the second term. I think a lot of that is just rhetoric. I don't see NATO going anywhere anytime soon, certainly not in the near future. So I think that you're maybe understating the threat of Greenland going to China. I think you're overstating the risk of NATO coming apart in this term.
I think you could go independent. I mean, the Poland, like I think the majority like it in the abstract, but if you ask them if they'd take an economic hit, most of them say no. But again, like the point is, like at any point along that process is where the US could step in, right? Because obviously if they were going to go full independent and leave NATO and so on, that's going to be a problem. And then it would be like, okay, well, if you leave, you're going to have to be part of NATO, or we're going to have to beef up, the US security arrangement. But yeah, I mean, even like John Bolton is like this super hawkish guy. He was actually in charge of he created some kind of task force about studying the Arctic for long-term security when he was in the Trump administration. And this was never even raised as a possibility that there was enough of a threat that the US would have to actually take over the island. So I think it's just downstream. It is just a Trump vanity project. I mean, I just don't see the logic here.
I think it's just a more ambitious and expansive agenda. I would argue that, Trump was one of the first China hawks in the first place. Trump was one of the first guys to say, look, China should not be in the World Trade Organization. They should not have most favored nation status. They're a currency manipulator. No one was talking like that. I mean, Obama had a pivot to Asia, but it was really Trump that put China in the center. And even many of these foreign policy experts, they admit that is one of the major enduring legacies of the first Trump election, is that he reoriented the Pentagon to China economically, with trade, with defense, in a way that just wasn't happening. So I think that Greenland, like the rest of it, it's an oversight. And, maybe Trump is in it for partially the wrong reasons, but I think he's making people maybe look at it with fresh eyes. And I don't think that it's debatable that Greenland is a vital national security interest. It certainly will be in the 2040s to 2050s. It would be better for us to have it. You could say, is it worth it? But that's a different question than is it better to have it? I don't think anyone would deny that it is better for us to have it. The question is, how do you acquire it and whether it's worth the risk? And I'll agree with you that, this strategy did not work, and Trump is not a strategist, but it would be better for us to have it. And if we could acquire it, we should, and it would be better that way.
I mean, it would be better to have Japan as well, right? Australia.
Yeah, but Greenland has 55,000 people, so.
Yeah, but in the abstract, so you wouldn't have a moral problem with that for any individual country.
I mean, it does really depend. I mean, I don't know that I would believe in a puppet state of 100 million people, but 55,000, I mean, that to me is not a legitimate country, not at all.
Yeah. But it seems like in the past, when you make I feel like sometimes you use the realist logic, the realist argument about power projection and defense and, anarchy on the international stage, that you kind of use that as justification for a might makes right sort of approach to international relations. And you do. I mean, you have. I mean, it's like aesthetic as well, right? You like the aesthetics of empire and conquests and big maps and spreading America outwards. So, I mean, what is like the? Do you have a sense of like? Is there morality between states in war as it comes to U.S. expansion? Is there a limit? Is it all just like security on the international stage? Take what you can get.
I do believe that there is I do believe that there is morality between states. With that being said, I do think that it gets very convoluted when it concerns like great powers, especially in the modern age, because when you look at the kind of natural law doctrine of what constrains the actions of a government and what constrains the relationship between the people in a state or the relationship of states, it comes from this idea of like, well, people have rights and people have a right to be alive and people have a right to do this and they have obligations to do this and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but we live in the era of intercontinental ballistic missiles, and we're in a strategic rivalry with a communist country. And we are in a security dilemma. We are in like a security competition with these countries. And so you look at something like Greenland. I don't believe that we can go in and kill everybody and plant our flag. I don't think that there's no limits to our power. With that being said, Greenland is a huge island. These people cannot defend it. These people don't even occupy the entire thing. And so who is to say that because they were there first, now they have this sacred right to exercise control over everything that happens here? Who gets to put a military base? Who gets to do this, that, and the other? Okay, well, if China comes in, they can put missiles there that can kill us. And this idea that, well, we actually have to get their express permission and we have to go there and say, hey, please, can we defend ourselves? I think that's totally ridiculous. And I think there's a fine line between saying, you can't genocide people that are in your way, you can't enslave people that are in your way, you can't declare war for no reason, and saying we have to plead with economically and militarily inferior people to advance vital strategic interests. I think that surely if we can have a military because we have a right to live, then that also implies we have a right to do things that are strategically in our interest. And that involves complex supply chains. It involves island chains. It involves early warning systems, and so I think that maybe there's some gray area there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're talking about like economics and supply chains, you're kind of just getting into colonialism, right? But I mean,
not necessarily.
Okay, but I mean, Vatican II explicitly rejects wars for strategic interests, for conquest. It affirms that even on the international stage of ICBMs and nuclear weapons, you've got to respect just war theory, right? And you've got multiple popes since then reaffirming this, encyclicals, it's in the catechism. So do you think that that's an oversight of them not understanding the material reality of the modern world, or do you think that's a misapplication of moral teaching?
I think that I respect the moral principle, but I think the way that it is applied is sloppy. Because I read the encyclical Peace on Earth, and it's all flowery language. I mean, I think this works in a monastery. I think this works when you're writing it from the Vatican, and I read it, and I found it to be, honestly, it doesn't sound very serious. I think that the moral principles are true. I don't see a lot of room where it's practically applied to the arms race. I don't see how it's rigorously applied to the reality of the modern world. And so in principle, like I said, I do believe that states have obligations. I do think they're governed by moral conduct. And there are certain rules that we all understand. Like, let's say the Soviet Union, their nuclear weapons one day were neutralized somehow. Now, you would say from a strategic point of view, well, we should nuke them. If there's an opening where the Soviet Union strategic weapons are, for whatever reason, they're inoperable, well, it would be logical to say, okay, we need a first strike. Let's hit all their nukes. We will be safe from a nuclear attack. That is what you would do. From a natural rights point of view, I would say, no, that's immoral. You can't vaporize people to get the upper hand. So clearly there is some foundation for that. But to take it to this extreme point where you say we can't engage in an arms race, we can't secure supply chains, we can't secure the island chain, that's where I think it's just not being applied rigorously. I don't think that's serious. And, you know, like you say, supply chains are inherently colonialism. I don't think that's the case. Look at Taiwan. We have a favorable government in Taiwan. They make all the most advanced chips and semiconductors. We need that for everything. If we don't have that, people will die in America. If China gets it and we go into a war with China, if they control Taiwan and we're in a war with China, they do a blockade, they kill people. Now, ensuring that Taiwan has a favorable government and doing what we need to do to bribe them or to overthrow their government and get favorable representation, we know whatever it is, I think that's a legitimate extension of our interests. And we're not talking about a war per se. You know, by definition, we're not talking about a war, but we are talking about intervention for a supply chain of vital strategic interest. And, you know, some of these are more convoluted than others. Things like fertilizer, food, pharmaceuticals, you know, all of those things are necessary for a nation to survive. And we are in a constant competition to control the transit of these things, the processing of these things, the raw materials. And we need those things for flourishing and for thriving and for life. And so I think to secure those is legitimate. That doesn't mean that we can kill whoever we want and genocide whoever we want. I think there's limitations, but I also think that going with those limitations, the government has obligations to ensure the continuity of the country. So that I do think that it's applied erroneously.
Okay, I've got the super chat link up. It's entropystream.live/channel/Keith Woods. I'm not going to read all the super chats, I don't think. I don't want to. You had Monday to Friday of super chats, so they usually drag a little bit on these streams. But I'll try and read most of them at least if people send them in. One other topic I wanted to cover with you that I had in mind before we began. So when you started out, right? When did you start streaming? Like 2017?
Yeah, 2017.
So had you kind of accepted politically then that like the US is going to become minority white, or at that point did it seem politically feasible that it could be reversed?
You know, under Trump, I thought it might be possible, but then I very quickly realized it was an inevitability that we would slide into at least 49% white status.
Yeah, because I guess like the kind of default position for like, you know, paleo conservative, like America First was, you know, supermajority white, preserve the traditional demographics of the country. So, you know, it's a big existential question, right? When that's not on the table anymore, like what is the political strategy then? Because I mean, it becomes a lot more difficult if you're a minority to say like we should engineer demographics to make this like one group among many groups. Okay, it's the foundational group, but it's still a tough sell to say we should like engineer this group to be dominant, right? So yeah, I mean, have you kind of changed strategy or your idea of what America First will look like just on the basis of that reality?
No, because my political ambitions have always been that we as a people just need to increase in power. You know, that